Conservation League is thrilled to welcome you to the 47th Annual Art Deco Weekend. Celebrating Florida's historical coastal communities. My name is Nina Weber-Worth, and I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Directors. And we, for those of you not members of MDL,
do you want to put it on Facebook Live? Or what was it? Facebook Live? My phone? No. Facebook Live?
Receive free walking tours, a gift discount, and our online e-newsletter. More importantly, your donation support our ongoing efforts to preserve, promote, and protect historic architecture on Miami Beach and beyond. Historic preservation is in peril in the state of Florida, now dubbed the Tallahassee takeover of local jurisdiction, which will override national historic designation and open up our iconic Ocean Drive to development. We are working diligently to ensure that our preservation mission will be sustained for the long term. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Rick Gonzalez, AIA. He has over 38 years of experience in historic preservation and the architectural profession. Rick received 2 architectural degrees from CUA in Washington, D.C., with additional coursework completed in Miami, in Guatemala City, and San Jose, Costa Rica. Mr. Gonzalez is a past board member and past president of the Florida Trust of Historic Preservation from 2008 to 2020, and a member of the American Institute of Architects since 1988, and was appointed to the Florida Historic Commission by Governor Charlie Crist in 2008 to the present, and to Florida Board of Architecture and Interior Design by Governor Bush for 2 terms, from 2007, and he was chairman, from 2000 to 2007, and he was chairman in 2005 and 2006. Mr. Gonzalez was awarded the PB AIA Gold Medal in November 2020. In March 2020, Rick was appointed by President Trump to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, where he also temporarily served as Vice Chairman and Interim Chair. Mr. Gonzalez lectures on historic preservation and urbanism in Florida and Colombia, and is also an expert witness on matters throughout the state of Florida. Mr. Gonzalez works in conjunction with the Historic Society of Palm Beach County, offering walking tours on Friday afternoons from December to April for the past 21 years. Take it away, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Make sure I don't trip. I guess I'll start first. How many of you are historic preservationists in this room? Raise your hand. Okay, everybody, huh? This is going to be fun then, all right? Great. That's what I wanted to hear. That's wonderful. All right, so this is a presentation. I've known Daniel for many years. We've been friends in the fight, at least 10 years, probably longer. And I've come down to Miami Beach to help in the past, so I'm always available. That's one of the things I love to do now is advocacy. When I was the president of the Florida Trust, I was helping Melissa to get advocacy going. That was really my thing. And it's the thing that I still like to do. I like to do that all over the state of Florida. I have a thriving business with 20 architects. I don't have to be in the office every day, so I can go and help different projects, buildings, communities across the state, because this is all we have. And it's rapidly changing, right? We had COVID, and for the last 3, now 4 years, everybody wants to move down here, right? Everybody from Chicago, New York, everywhere else. That's good and that's bad, right? It creates work, but it's also putting a lot of stress into our communities, especially our historic communities. So this lecture that I put together, I was on a plane to a National Trust Conference in Houston back in 2015, and I wrote the outline, and then I refined it, and I did it a couple of times, and I ran it through the president of the National Trust at the time, Paul Edmondson, and the president of the ACHP in Washington, the Advisory Council. And they said, yeah, it kind of sounds workable. And basically, what it tried to do is take 38 years of observation. That's what I do. I observe the built environment and see things that might be in common from different places, from Miami Beach, Palm Beach, in this case, and also St. Augustine, and see what kind of things or what kind of rules could we create to help defend our sacred, historic Florida places, right? They are under attack. They are completely under attack right now. So if we don't come up with some common denomination of ideas that we can share, there's nothing going to be here for our grandkids. I'm lucky enough, I have my daughter Isabella, my son Ricardo here today. They work with me and they're the next generation. And I hope that there'll be a third and a fourth generation. I started the firm with my father, who passed away last year, Ricardo. So I'm hoping that they'll get the bug. They'll continue to have what I call the bug of historic preservation. We all got it at different times in our careers. I remember as a young architect reading Barbara's book on Art Deco. I still have it in my library, and meeting her a couple of times before she passed away. And so that's what I hope to do with this little presentation, to show you some interesting things and these rules that we can apply throughout the presentation. Now, don't take it all serious. Some of it is a little, loose, fun, but it's Friday afternoon and you have a great festival going today, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Okay, so let's start. You heard already a little bit about me. I'm on the Historical Commission, the Florida Historical Commission, which, as Melissa was talking about, we work the grants across the state of Florida. I'm only going to add one thing, is that for every dollar that the state of Florida gives, it generates $8 of accompanying financing money from developers, contractors, work money. So $10 million, right? So the state of Florida gives you $8 million, right? We're going for $8 million this year. 8 times 8, another $68 million in economic impact every single year. The study from 2010 is old. We're going to update it soon. It's probably going to show even more than $8 to each one. I'm also on the board of the University of Florida with the students at the School of Architecture. And one of the things that I just finished was on the direct support for St. Augustine. St. Augustine has, in the 1960s, they rebuilt 30 buildings, small buildings on St. George's. And for many years, the city of St. Augustine was running it. They ran out of the willpower, they ran out of money, so they said, gave it back to the state. The state said, we can't do anything with this. University of Florida raised their hand, and they said, we'll take it, we'll manage it. And they're taking over, and they've done a wonderful job protecting these buildings. These buildings were designed based on historic buildings, but then they're now historic in their own, right? Because they're 60 years old. And they've done a great job of creating historic place in the city of St. Augustine. I'm going to start with the rules. And if you want a copy of the presentation, we can email it to you. But here we go. Historic places, they change over time, right? We know that. We can't stop the change. But one thing we can do, we can manage it and direct it. I like to say it's like we're all in a school bus, right? We can let someone else drive the school bus, a developer or somebody else, right, and crash the bus. Or we can take over the bus and drive the bus. We can manage and direct it. We can do that. We have commissioners. We have mayors. I think one of the things I do when I travel and I talk is try to meet the local mayors, the local commissioners. They're the ones that we need to get to. The staff is great. We all have great city staff, great historic preservation planners. I've yet to run into a bad historic preservation planner in the state of Florida. It's the mayors. When a mayor says, I got to knock down that building and put a parking lot there because we don't have enough parking in downtown Boynton Beach, and we say no. The community says no. We save that old school, and that old school is the cultural and arts facility of Boynton Beach today, okay? Because we re-educated the people in charge, the mayor and the city commissioners, right? So we can do that and we can direct that. Florida's historical places, districts and residents, they become more valuable over time. That's like a duh, right? I mean, Coral Gables, right? Miami Beach, the historic homes, they're worth more. That is a fact. And because it's a fact, we need to protect them, whether they are designated or not. Just because they're not designated, Venetian Islands, any of the other places around town, That doesn't mean that they can't be protected, you know? Daniel, right? We've been trying to do that. We got to keep doing that. Number 3, this is an interesting point. About 20 to 25% of all of the Florida cities and towns, by the way, we have 400 cities and towns in the state of Florida and villages, and we have 67 states. About 25% of them, about 100, are of historic merit. They have historic quality all the way through, say, the 50s, mid-century modern, going all the way back. Of those, 83 are CLGs. Do you know what CLGs are? Certified local government. Remember these words. CLG. Your city of Miami Beach is a CLG. You want to be a CLG. Why? Because you get federal free dollars. Now, if you're not a CLG, it's a lot harder. Right, Melissa? It's very hard not to get federal funds after hurricanes. Guess where they go first? When the Panhandle got hit by Hurricane Michael, they go to the CLG communities first. Because they know it. Somebody there cares about historic preservation. So let's give them the money, you know, to bring back the historic quality of the place. All right? Number 5, big problem, infill. And even more now with these new laws that are coming in, right? These state laws that want to take home rule away from us. What the hell is going on, right? What the hell is going on? We need to get to our legislators and tell them that's not right. That's going to be chaos. Miami Beach is not Palm Beach. Palm Beach is not St. Augustine or Key West. You know, every town of these 100 towns is unique in its own way. It should not be treated the same by somebody in Tallahassee saying what can be saved, what can be demolished, what's falling apart, what's not falling apart, and so forth. So we got to be able to do that, to deal with the new infill, because that's what's going to come. As soon as they start knocking down these historic buildings, you've seen all the new stuff already occurring, right? It's going to be on steroids, okay? It's going to be a lot worse. You know, and I hate to be the speaker of bad news, but it's not pretty right now. It's going to be on steroids. It's going to be out of control, okay? So we have to have a management plan for our historic districts. The core is a historic district. And then the edges and the entry corridors into these districts. For example, in Miami Beach, you've got 3 causeways coming in, right? And then you have down from Collins coming down. Those are your entry corridors. Your edges, my son put a great picture here later on. I'll show you. You're going to love that the interesting view of the edge in Miami Beach compared to other places, you know? So the edges and the corridors are very, very important to get that context, be harmonious, and keep that historic setting in place and protect it. Always practice do no harm, right? Doctors have an oath. Architects, developers, and builders should have an oath. We shall do no harm, right? That doesn't happen. Why? Because it's the wallet, right? The king wallet that's in charge these days. Number 6, if you can only save a Florida historic place by relocating it, preserving it, adapting it, new use to it, in a similar historic setting, that's great, right? It's better to do that than to destroy it and fill the dumpster with more historic buildings, right? So I think now more than ever, especially with these new rules that the state wants to shove down our throats. Okay, number 7, as I've been analyzing these cities and towns, 5% of these places that's not a very large area of a city, okay? They should always be of the highest design quality. Okay, and especially at the core, the soul, what we call the soul of the city, right? When you're here on Ocean Drive, that's the soul. I mean, my God, you're on every football game that the Dolphins play. They show Ocean Drive, right? It's like no brainer, right? But we have to do what we can to protect the soul. High quality design development needs to be mitigated, and it's very important also along the edges of this core, that's protected, because it's like a cancer. If you don't protect it, the Huns are going to get in and they're going to destroy the buildings, and God knows what we're going to get in our historic cores, okay? So any new buildings, okay, and we'll show you some examples from St. Augustine, or groups of buildings should be no larger than 10-15% in massing than what's in this historic core. A new building comes in, all right, we understand, something fell apart, new building. It shouldn't be 3, 4, 5 times bigger, which that state law is going to do, by the way. Because once they knock down the historic building, they're going to say, you can now build based on the current zoning and building codes, and that's going to be a disaster, okay? So 10, 15% in terms of scale, context, massing, and square footage, no bigger than that. All right, 95%, the other, 5% is the good stuff, 95% is the other part of the city. Go ahead and build your big back mansion out there. Build your McDonald's, build your big apartment buildings outside of the historic 5%. That's a special area. So if you want to build a building bigger than 10, 15%, go build it in the other parts of the city that are not historic or not on the edge or not in the corridors. Number 9, most architects, contractors, designers, they don't do historic preservation. Right, Melissa? It's hard. We have a limited list of architects that are involved at the state, but there's just not an interest in that. It's too hard. It's hard to fix an old building and put it back to reuse. What does every architect want? A blank piece of paper and a pen, right? And that's it. I'm telling you, I'm one of them. And then the other thing is the thumbs, the big thumbs. What do they do with historic buildings? They apply, I got to put my mark on that building, right? I got to put what I call big fat thumbs and leave a mark. Live scheme. In Toronto, the Royal Ontario Museum of Art. Never forgot the first time I went to see that. Oh my God, what an atrocity by a star architect. You walk up to this beautiful neoclassical building and it's glass jars everywhere on the outside of the building. And I'm like horrified, like how could they do this to a historic structure? I said to myself, let me run inside. It'll be safe inside. It'll have arches. It'll have walkways. I walk inside, the drywall, everything is angled and shards, and it was just like, that's not right. You cannot put your big thumbs on historic buildings. They do a lot of that in Europe. Luckily in America, we don't do as much of that, but there is some precedent for that, right? Okay? And then you got to keep those kind of architects out of these historic areas. The last one, the Mr. Potato Head syndrome. Okay? Told you we were going to have some fun. Who played with Mr. Potato Head when they were young? Okay, a lot of people. That's my crowd. All right, good. All right, good, right? A piece of Art Deco here. This is a beautiful room, by the way. Everything that you need is in here. A piece of mid-century modern. Let me throw a little L. Let me paint it black, because black is everything now. It used to be gray and white. Now they're painting all the buildings black in Florida. No color. Come on, South Beach. Look at all the color here, right? Hello, color. When did color become something passé? I don't get it, right? So the Mr. Potato Head syndrome, that goes together with the McMansion syndrome, right? So it's not only that it's big, bad, and bulky, it's that they also throw everything they learned in architectural school and they make a total fiasco, right? So happy driving down on the causeway, the first one over here, the I-30. 390 MacArthur, right? I grew up here when I was a kid, by the way. I grew up by Shenandoah. Beautiful little historic neighborhood. I'm so glad the hedges are this high. So I don't need to see the destruction that's occurred along the islands, right? These boxes, I mean, they look like robot things. I don't know. It's like, they look like, remember that game that used to switch the pictures, right? I mean, these big boxes, these odd things that are now, that are called houses now, right? Right. The other problem in our downtowns too is these what do you call them? The Jenga, right? How they put the buildings now, the big buildings, right? So our cities are losing their core of being. So keeping things, not losing your resources, and not replacing with major buildings. So let's go and look at, if we did these rules, I think if we applied some of these rules, right? I think our environments, what's left would be really nice, statewide heritage, right, to have for future generations. How many years have you been enjoying this situation here with Miami design? 40 years, since 1979? 47 years. What a great legacy you guys have, right? And the Preservation Foundation in Palm Beach. And in Coral Gables, the Historical Association, right? All these great peoples that are doing this across the state. We have to band together and we have to work with the Florida Trust, and we better put advocacy up front because we're about to get whacked by state government and by other interests in the state. All right, so 3 case studies. St. Augustine up at the north, Palm Beach, where I live and work in West Palm, and Miami Beach, where we're at. St. Augustine's an amazing, oldest city in North America. I'm sorry if you're from Boston, but, You must have heard this, right? We were doing urban renewal in St. Augustine when landed up in Massachusetts, right? Yes, ma'am. We were 50 or 60 years old already, working away, us Spaniards up in St. Augustine, right? Before all of those English folks showed up in the Mayflower. Of course, the town of Palm Beach, similar to the city of Miami Beach. The great old Henry Flagler, right, bringing his railroad all the way down to Key West. What an amazing character. And he was a developer, right? But what a way to do things, right? And these cities are very similar, but they're very different too. For example, town of Palm Beach does not have historic districts. You're thinking, oh my God, it must be total abuse. And you know what? They have a fortress. What is their fortress? They got two programs. They have Landmarks Commission for any house or office commercial building that's historic. You get reviewed by 6 or 8 architects with historic credentials and other people with historic credentials. If you're not historic, but it's an empty lot or a new lot or a renovation, you go to ARCOM, Architectural Review Committee. Same thing, very well educated architects, realtors, interior designers, and others. You better be on that 5% of architects, because if you're not, it's going to take you 2 years to get a project approved, okay? Interesting, right? They don't have historic districts, but they know how to defend their place, you know? Miami Beach, you have historic districts. You have some areas that don't have districts, you know? And the city of Augustine, they have a lot of historic districts in their core, but once you hop out of the core, it's a nightmare. It's really a problem. So St. Augustine, for those of you that might not be familiar where it is, located just south of Jacksonville, it is a rural county, right? The city is on a peninsula. It comes down like this. The fort, great location. Why? Because of the direct view of the natural harbor and the cut to the ocean, so they could see all the English, French ships coming into town. Everybody could get ready to fight. They had, you know, and some tricky sandbars, right? Great sandbars now, and they're 400 or 500 years old. So if you didn't know how to navigate in there, you were going to have your situation. Some of the things that have impacted St. Augustine, similar to South Florida, President Eisenhower, he built these highways and he destroyed many historic places, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Miami, right? Put the highway right through the middle of the city, okay? And then they created exits. And then God said, I'll put a McDonald's, a gas station, on orange sales, and I'll make it really ugly when you get off the interstate, right? And then you're driving, because it takes about 8 miles to get to St. Augustine, and you're just hoping and waiting, and then you get there. And then you're like in heaven, right? But to get there, you have to go through a lot of crap. Why do we put up with that, right? Why is only 5% of what we're building is of quality, 95% is a mediocrity? I don't understand that, right? I think we need to change our way of doing things, you know? Highways were great. They brought people together, but they're terrible because they tied us to the car and created these problems getting to these beautiful places in the state of Florida. Beautiful map. There it is. There's the fort on the top. Very walkable community, right? We used to walk, right? We used to be all thin because we all used to walk, right? Go to cities. I live in Bogota part of the year. Everybody's thin in Bogota. They're walking everywhere. The traffic's horrible, like Miami Beach. They walk back and forth everywhere. You know, there you go. Walkable community. Okay. Here's our fort and here's our districts, right? So you all understand it's great to be on the National Register of Historic Districts, but it's more important to be on the city historic preservation map, right? To be locally designated, right? I think Melissa said all preservation occurs at the local level. I'm on the Historical Commission at the state. We have advice, we try to help, but we can't stop any developer from doing anything, okay? Up at the National Park Service in DC, they'll give you your nice a certificate and a nice plaque for your house, right? And you're on the list, but they can't stop someone from doing damage to a building. It has to be on the local level. That's where you have the teeth. And Miami Beach has one of the best historic design and planning departments in the state of Florida. I did a project here years ago on Alton Road, the golf course, and it was a great opportunity to collaborate with the planning department and the historic preservation folks, and I'm telling you, they're the top people. One of them, in fact, is now running the Palm Beach. James is running Palm Beach right now. Okay, so these are the historic districts of St. Augustine. The number 1, the core of the city, and then 2 and 3, and these are the arrival points from the west, King Street, from the east, A1A, Bridge of Lions, and from the north, A1A, that's coming in through the city, adjacent to the fortress. Some case studies. I'll start from the north first, coming in from the north, okay? You've gone through all that driving, right? Maybe you came from Jacksonville, been driving for an hour. You get little peaks of new urbanism here and there, so you get excited. Oh my God, let me get some coffee there or some lunch. You keep driving, and there's suburbs and all the other junk as you get, and you go through and you come to this new building. It's a brand new building, and this building is vinyl. This building is covered in vinyl. Vinyl is a very bad word in historic preservation, right? Using vinyl materials because it's a false sense of what it used to be. And the rhythms and the proportions of the buildings, I don't know, I think it's some sort of Victorian thing that they wanted to build there, you know, and it's really not a good example. It's a shame because it's also on the edge of where you get into a special zone here before you come into the rest of the city, which has been where large activities occur. Years ago, the city purchased the old historic building here for the visitor center, restored it, and then they created liners, and then they hid what they needed to hide, a large garage, right? Similar to what you've done here in Miami Beach, where you keep historic buildings or smaller buildings, and then you hide a big garage behind that. You've done a very good job at that. And they did that over here on number 2 over here. And there's the visitor center, number 3, and the garage. As you can see, nice scale. And it works with the scale and the history of St. Augustine without trying to be a false sense of history as the other buildings. And then doing small buildings, that 15% in size that I was telling you about. These are rather newer buildings. They're about 10 years old, 10 years old, a series of smaller buildings right across the largest landmark that we have, right? The old fort, right? Number 5 and number 4 over here. But I put those in there just to show you the scale, right? It's in context a little bit larger than the historic, but it's still 10, 15%. It fits really well. And they've done a good job at that. The problem, like in West Palm Beach, in St. Augustine, and other cities, is that we're now getting all the wonderful developers and architects of Miami are going up to these places, you know, and they're arguing for bigger buildings and new things because they're bringing an iconic building and it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be great. And so let me build something 3 times bigger because, you know, the numbers don't work and we have to do it that way. So in St. Augustine, they've been having a struggle with that. The answer might be like what they do in Palm Beach, ARCOM, an architectural review board, or like they do in a lot of the new urban places in Florida, a town architect. Okay, so for example, Jupiter has the town of Abacoa, 2,000 acres, and we have a town architect that reviews all the projects there. It's a great way of keeping in check the development issues of new projects, new infill projects in historic districts. Another example now coming in from the east. This is an interesting situation right now. You see that? That's a beautiful historic anyway. It's the way it's always been. We have another enemy at the state government. Not an enemy, another challenging, the Florida Department of Transportation. Okay? The Florida Department of Transportation wants to take this historic and beautiful way to get in and out of the city and butcher it to make it more like I-95 or more, I don't know, you know, because, you know, someone's got to get somewhere 5 minutes faster, right? And so I didn't put the picture of what they want to do because I didn't want to upset you today on a Friday afternoon. Go look it up. It's on LinkedIn. It's on, a lot of people are really disturbed with the Department of, yes, not the bridge. They finished the bridge. This is part 2, the landing, this area up here. Let me get the point. That area right there, that beautiful area, right? Look at that. You come in, you make a right, you go on the bridge, you come in, you make a right, you go north, or you take your time and you go to the most beautiful green space in northern Florida. That's not good enough. We got to make it faster. So they want to blow it up to pieces and rebuild it. Not a good thing to happen. One nice thing that we were able to do, we worked on a project right next door. It's actually a putt-putt park. Have you seen it over here? And created a basin so the park now has, for mitigation, right? We're low, right? I remember one time I was in a meeting in St. Augustine, and the next day I happened to have to come to Miami Beach, and the flooding was exactly the same. I couldn't believe it. This is really, this is a country, southeastern United States problem, right? The flooding. So the idea of using green space as overflow, right, for when the storms come. I'll show you a couple of other examples too. Wherever you can get that here, make sure that happens, right? I mean, sure, the park over here and other park locations around the city are going to be used for that. So we did a little park building there, kept the putt-putt, but did it so they can put the blockers down, the panels, storm panels, and then they can block up to 3 feet of water from coming into the core of the city. Okay, and then again, I wanted to show you a Mr. Potato Head experience. The reason I wrote this document back in 2015 is because of this thing. This thing is here. There's actually 3 of them. There's this one, right? There's this one over here, and there's a third one over there. So that's on King Street. King Street's the main drive coming in to St. Augustine. My parents used to take me there from Miami when I was a little kid and loved it and went to go, instead of Disney, take your kids to St. Augustine, right? You get off the interstate, you come into US 1 downtown area, and you used to see the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters were Flagler's corporation, their headquarters in St. Augustine. What's happened since then? Well, they were converted, adaptive reuse, that's a checkpoint, right? That's good, into dormitories. Well, there wasn't enough dormitories, so 5 years ago, they built that crap over there in front of the vista, right? So the historic vista is gone of the clue in your mind that says, hey, I'm just arriving to a really special place. Instead, it's, hey, that looks like the apartments back in anywhere, Florida, right? Or, hey, let me throw everything that I can on this new hotel, including color, every type of architectural feature, and just plop it in the front door of St. Augustine, right? So it's really a shame that the west side, more than the north side or the east, is really compromised because the bulk of the people come from I-95 from the west, right? Few from Jacksonville and few from the beach. So there you go. Now for the good stuff, this is what gives me peace. I told you what gave me heartburn. So this gives me a lot of peace. With UF, we worked on the government center. This is the longest acting government building in the history of the United States, right? From the 1500s, not the original, this is actually the 1700 building, but there are some of the foundations from earlier years, and it's been restored and adaptively reused. It's now a museum. It's a wonderful space. They have great parties in the courtyard. You can rent the courtyard for parties, it's a fabulous reuse of a historic building. And it has 2 wonderful things going on. It has the frontage over here on the park next to the church and Cathedral Place, okay? And that park leads to the monument that leads you to the bridge. And then on the west side, Flagler was amazing. He really was amazing. All the things that he did over 100, that was kind of like our high point, I think, I don't know. I'm trying to see other things. Casa Monica Hotel, the other hotel over here, the Alcazar, which is now the City Hall. It's a beautiful City Hall. And Flagler College, right? Those 3 buildings form and protect one of the most beautiful urban spaces in North America right over there. Okay? That's the core. It needs to be very, very protected, right? There is still some bad or good things that can occur when this gets redeveloped. It's a little gas station and a bank building, So hopefully the city will say, no, we want you to be great like what's been built, and we want you to finish the square and make sure that it's spectacular, because right now it is very, very good. Flagler College has done their job. A1, 1A, 1A are 2 buildings over here, right across the street. They're nice, right? They're 10, maybe 15% larger than any of the historic building context typology in the city of St. Augustine. Other areas of St. Augustine along the waterfront, I showed you already on the north side examples of good infill. Now and also as you come down to the bridge, a lot of restorations, a lot of infill. There's a Hilton Hotel. They did a brilliant job. They created an underground parking and they broke the hotel into pieces so it looks like cottages, right? So instead of having one blob of a hotel, they did, like smaller pieces. It's a great little building, right where the number 2 is, okay? Now, on the south side, the flooding, right? The flooding that's been occurring now more and more. The knee-jerk reaction. I don't understand this, Melissa, why this is happening, but you can't just pick up a historic building and lift it up 6 or 8 feet up in the air, okay? History occurs at the ground level, at the street level. Not at 5 feet, not at 8 feet. That's not history anymore. That's you taking away what's called the historic setting. Historic setting is so important. And when you've done that, that's it. You ruin it, not only for yourself, but for the other buildings, other historic buildings that have decided to remain at the right level. And maybe they've been using flood panels, or maybe they've been using stucco or terrazzo floor, other finishes. I told you I've traveled to Colombia, to Cartagena, and to Havana, very poor cities in San Juan, Puerto Rico. What do they do every time there's a hurricane or a storm? Get the brush out, get the hose out, wash the floor. The light fixtures, the outlets are up high. They have plaster on the walls, clean everything out. None of this drywall that we keep using that we have to keep ripping out over and over again. Poor people are doing that, and they're managing very, very well in other historic places in the Caribbean basin. We need to start thinking about that. We need to use different materials, terrazzo floor, plaster, at least to 4 feet, right? Be prepared for this war of water that we're going to continue to have in our histories. Not do this where they have, it's like the buildings are doing this. Avenida Menendez, this is district number 1 of St. Augustine. This is the most important district. And the most important street because it faces the water, right? You have buildings doing this, right? There's something wrong. That should not be happening.
You been in St. Augustine when it was
Yes.
because I was in that marina. Getting out of that.
Yes.
You could not walk anywhere in the city.
It's bad. It's bad.
You can leave those at ground level, but they're all flooded up to your waist.
There's a lot of things that are being addressed similar to what you've done over here. New underground services, new ways of pumps, creating ways to get the water out of the city. Very quickly, I want to finish before I run out of time. St. Augustine, McMansions, they got their McMansions too, right outside the historic district. They have their black spaceships too that have landed. And you know what? That one's a real insult. You know why it's an insult? They dropped like 4 of these in the African-American neighborhood of Lincolnville, okay? Right? Because they could buy the lots, tear down the cottages that were there, and drop that crap in there and sell that for over $1 million, adjacent to historic homes. That's terrible. And these McMansions are a block or 2 away from Avenida Melendez on the south side, They should be higher standards. They don't have the standards that they need to have in place for the historic district and also for the new areas. Or worse, when they try to do a false historic building, right? I think that's got like 6 inches of thickness, maybe a foot, right? To try to create a look that it's smaller, a better job over here where these cottages are facing the water, and a secondary addition set back from the primary addition, There's no land, so they got to go up, but at least it's set back and it didn't compromise the front elevation. All right, Town of Palm Beach. There are 3 main entrances to the town next to West Palm, like Miami and Miami Beach. We have similar issues. Great town. This is a 1904 map. I love it. I have that map in my office. It was all train and water, right? Everybody used to come to Florida either by train or before that by water, right? The Deer Estate down in Deering Estate, Vizcaya, right? And in Fort Lauderdale on the river, the house that's up there, right? Everything was oriented water transportation, right? It was all water, right? And then the rail came in, and look at the beautiful grid for the city and the large buildings, right? Because it became a destination resort. Very large buildings, but very well designed. They don't bother you. If you go to the Breakers, have you been to the Breakers? It's a majestic building. Has it bothered anybody to walk up to the Breakers? No, I don't think so. Does it bother anybody to walk up to some of the new large condominiums that have been built on the edge There's a big difference, right? In terms of, you can do big, but there's a certain way of doing larger buildings. Here are the entries. Southern Boulevard is where Mar-a-Lago is. We've been working there for 30 years. Don't blame him. He's actually a pretty good preservationist, believe it or not. At least in that category, I can testify on that, okay? The middle bridge and then the north bridge, right? And then along A1A from the south, because there's an inlet on the north side of Palm Beach. Coming in through Royal Poinciana Way, where the golf course is, but the main downtown. Number 2 and 3 are the Royal Poinciana Shopping Center. Actually, that was the first suburban urban shopping center done in the United States in the 1950s by Mr. Volk. Beautiful colonial revival over here, number 3. The problem is the new owner said, well, we need a waterfront restaurant. And so this is their vision. And this is what's left of the historic of this building over here on the water, right? That one that's there, right? You see that one down there, right? So they're rebuilding it, and they're calling that historic preservation, right? So no. Okay, when you knock down 95% of a building, call it whatever you want, but it's not a historic adaptive reuse. It's basically a new building with the skin of some fragments of a historic building, right? Some people call that facadism, or what was it? What did you call it? Fasarectomy. Ectomy. I have a hard time with that word, but you know what I mean, right? It's just a really sad thing to occur. Along the waterfront to the middle bridge, we just finished last year these small buildings. Small is beautiful, by the way. You don't have to do everything huge. The Dockmaster buildings, one is 2 stories. They're on the water, and they help the town of Palm Beach with their marina. And they terminate the streets, the historic areas, at the end of the neighborhood just south of the middle bridge as you come into Palm Beach. Another one then on the south side, as I mentioned, Joseph Urban did the Bath and Tennis Club and the Mar-a-Lago Club. And I'm proud to say we worked on this property where we understood the historic impact of Mar-a-Lago. And every building that we've added to that property is secondary and away from the vista. There's a Mar-a-Lago, stands for ocean to lake. And there's actually a National Trust property easement that goes from the ocean to the lake that has been protected, right, from the ocean all the way to the lake. And every time we've done a building, we have a couple of small things going on right now. We've been very careful. Even a very large building, the ballroom, as you can see here, over there, it's secondary, right? It's lower. It's in an area that doesn't compete with a house. You know, it's very important to do that. I've seen a lot of very fine projects here in Miami Beach where you keep the hotel and you add a new structure. And most of those projects have been done very well, like these projects in Palm Beach. And then in the midsection of Palm Beach, Royal Poinciana Way, it's a lovely project by an architect friend of mine. It's great. It's actually 2 feet higher. The sidewalk comes up across the project, it goes down. They kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They put the garage underneath for parking, and they take flooding mitigation. And it's a very, very subtle way of urban renewal infill design. It looks like 6 houses. They're residential on the 2nd floor, and the 1st floor are shops and little villas, publicly oriented, publicly open. So again, if the buildings are not at the ground level, they're not public. They become private enclaves. And when you put something back up at 6-8 feet, you're taking away the public access. Very nice project if you ever go up to Palm Beach. And then examples of adaptive reuse. As I mentioned, the breakers, new breakers club over the years, secondary to the main club. The Flagler over there, before and after, 1920s hotel gone. It's probably the best hotel, house museum in the United States down there. And then in the historic areas, everybody knows Worth Avenue, I would imagine, right? Like everybody knows Española Way. We all know Española Way, and you all should know Worth Avenue, area number 2. But number 1 over here is the historic City Hall, fabulous building. It used to be City Hall with a fire station. They converted the fire station into an expansion of the City Hall. They built the best fire building I've ever seen. 3 stories, arcade, fire trucks tucked away. It's beautiful. It fits in the most urban area. What a great example. Even a police station too, right next to it over here. You know, so they've done with the park, with the City Hall, And then they respected the arcaded buildings right across the street, the Old Palm Historic Inn, which is located at the bottom. And then Worth Avenue, again, the example of the street buildings, large buildings, 2 to 5 stories, but with arcades, you know, to get you additional exposure, like Española Way, get you additional shopping exposure, right? And give you a wonderful area to walk around, to live upstairs, to stay upstairs, go to the beach, or to shop on the lower levels. Okay, last but not least, I think I got a little bit of time, hopefully. Miami Beach, you all know, of course, settled almost identical to Palm Beach. Very symbiosis relationship, right? Love-hate with Miami Beach, I would imagine. Just like Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. Do you guys also have a love-hate with the county, like county government and like...
City Miami.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, in West Palm, we have a big, you know, sometimes they're buddies, sometimes, you know, they hate each other, right? County government, city government, you know, but we all should be aware of state government, right? Because we can work with the counties and the cities and the towns, but what's coming next is going to be surprising, right? So your entryways, beautiful, again, beautiful map like the one in West Palm, Palm Beach and Miami Beach in Miami. Interesting that we found these photos. Looks like it was either a dog track or something at the south end. Was it a dog track? Yeah. You know, and it explains why we have these anomalies in the historic district, right? We have this amazing map, right? Look at that map. That's like New York City. It's so well laid out, right? That's a hell of a city map. Green spaces, the beach, the inlet, the cut or government cut, right? There it is. 1920s. There it was, exactly. Then this happened. So next. And then this happened. Oh, right? Don't blame me. You can blame my son. He put that picture in the PowerPoint. But I loved it when I first saw it, right? Okay. Trick question. Can you spot the protected versus the non-protected areas on this photo? Mind you, this is an old photo already, right? I had not been on Miami Beach in quite a while. And I don't know what to call it, but the arrival, that round elliptical building that's being finished right now, and everything else looks really small. Excuse me. Everything here looks really small now compared to what has recently been built, right? Why? Why do we have to do those things, right? And we got Joe's stone crab, okay, being check, and the great beach. You know, but look at this, right? This is magical. This is the core. This is really, really special. The same thing with the neighborhoods and the parks beyond. The districts are there. I love that you have so many districts. It's a shame that the islands did not get the districts, right? Venetian Islands and the other islands, you know, but there are some really nice areas that still have protection. Even so, we've lost some hotels recently, right? Some beautiful Shelbourne from the 50s, mid-century modern, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? A lot of people up in West Palm and Tallahassee, we were trying to help with that fight because we have to fight statewide, okay? Some really great places that we were looking at. Number 3, where the Bass Museum is on Collins, right? What a great urban space, right? You got a beautiful historic building, beautiful park, and the new buildings are behaving. How did you get them to behave there? Okay? Why are they, right? Exactly, right? Because of community engagement, getting involved, and going and writing and doing all the things that you need to do, right? The beautiful clubhouse being reused, the memorials, okay? Now when you come to the before I go to the Venetian Islands, there was a little neighborhood over here, Palm View Historic District, right? And Palm View, all the way to the commercial, and there's the big stuff over there. But look, it still has its identity, right? 1- and 2-story cottages, right? Nothing out of place, protected, great little neighborhood as you come in on your quarter, Venetian Causeway. MacArthur's another story, right? But at least Venetian, you know, and the mid-century buildings over here, some really great mid-century buildings over here. So that entry quarter, kudos, and hopefully it'll stay that way and it won't turn into a MacArthur look on the bottom.
Near the Trinity Church on the corner of the Venetian Causeway by Omni.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, in Miami. Yes.
They just know that they're going to put a donation story.
The old Herald, the Miami Heralds. I know, but the Miami, I know. I'm just saying, we came down to help try to save the Miami Herald. Spectacular, mid-century modern building, okay, period. And I even said to them, I said, it's going to take you over a year to demolish this building. They use this building like they did in Chicago to roll up the rolls of paper. The concrete in that building, it took them how long to demolish? And it's an empty piece of lot. Now, an architect or two have come up with these wavy things, you know, I don't know, I think they're taking the bottom of the ocean and creating something with it, you know, but who knows? Now, big, you know, and McMansions, because I'm running out of time, right? I mean, Mr. Potato Head. At the entry of Fifth, 2 lost opportunities right over here, right? Which is great because you do need the shopping, right? But the architecture could have been a little bit more like, let me take my clues off of the bigger buildings in Miami Beach, right? And some of the other historic buildings. The same thing with this other Mr. Potato Head over here at the bottom of Fifth, you know, which has been there, I think, for 20 years or so. And yet look at the City Hall, right? Spectacular building, right? It's not offensive. It's a large building, but it's beautiful because it's beautifully designed and it's timeless. It doesn't bother you, okay? Like the other things that are being built. Same thing with the Wilsonian. Look, it's a spectacular building. It's a large building. It could have been used also as an example or as a guidance to the newer buildings that were done. And last, to finish off, the Española Way, one of my favorite places in Miami Beach. That's perfection. That's perfection. And the other area of perfection, of course, is what's right outside over here, right? On Ocean. Must be protected. Live local. Get the hell out of Miami Beach and go build in that other 95%. Leave this little 5% area alone. That's the only thing we've got. We demolish it or we add on to it, we're going to destroy the very little thing that brings people back and forth. Last thing. Okay, this should have been a quick another quiz question, Ricardo. Like, which house do you like? Or something like that, right? The historic or, right, these wonderful binocular things that are going up everywhere, right? And like Daniel and I used to say when this all started like about 10 years ago, it's the idea of the double-edged sword. You know the idea of the double-edged sword? Or the idea of the frog that's in the water and the water gets warm and then he turns into like frog soup, right? You know the story, right? You know from kids, right? So I like to use analogies, sorry. So the first house gets destroyed, 2012, right? Oh, can't save that house. It's too old. It's gone. We need a new McMansion, right? It gets built. It replaces the historic house. And then another one, 3 houses away, gets built, right? Today, when you go on Google Earth, it's so sad and they're so bloated, right? They go to property line to property line. So it's not only vertical, but it's also horizontal, right? It's a bad problem that we have to address. It's going to get worse if this destruction, you know, these dilapidated buildings law passes through. I hope all of you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you all help save Florida, okay? Thank you. I think we have a few minutes for questions. Yes, sir.
So how do you sustainably grow without preserving that for the context? But you still need developing architects to add a dynamism to the city.
Okay. So Andres Duani or Victor Dover would say, put the civic architecture on civic places. Okay, so find a special property. And too bad, for example, on the road coming in on MacArthur, there were 2 great places that could have been done special there. Okay, because they are special entry points, you know, so maybe at the entryways or at a terminated vista, you know, have a star architect do something special, you know, but something that can still reflect where it's from. It's context-based, right? It needs to be context-based, you know? It could be, and I'm not saying replicate every Art Deco building again. Oh, no, that would not be the right thing either. But get inspired by Art Deco. Get inspired by Mediterranean, you know? That's what we did at the clubhouse, at the golf clubhouse on Alton. You know, we use the prior precedents to inspire us. It's a modern Art Deco instead of just an historic Art Deco. So I think that would be one way. Yes, ma'am.
How do you know, what odds you give us the big backing off and not pursuing all of these regulations and stepping in to the level because they're already saying that they're going to the casinos back a lot.
Yeah.
They've already told every municipality that whatever the vote is, their child doesn't happen.
What is it when you have a split personality? What's that called? It's the state is schizophrenic right now. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. No. It is. And I'll tell you why. They've done a hell of a job saving our natural places. They've been saving the Everglades. They've been spending money buying land like no tomorrow. In fact, they need to continue to buy, because if they buy and they put in conservation, no one's going to build a building or a parking lot there, right? So the more they buy, so they spend all that effort, which is a great effort, right? Right. So we don't become part of South Orlando someday, right? I mean, do we want to be South Orlando? No, right? They've been doing a great job conserving. So why not conserve our building? I don't understand. I really don't.
Everybody's eyesight. All the state parks, we just did a historical Florida drive. Growing up in Florida, so we saw that. I see what they've done. That has nothing to do with money by the gambling.
Yeah.
People that want to feel something. I don't see it that way. I think that.
Have you been to Las Vegas? It's not a pretty sight. It's not a pretty town. Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic stuff. How should that build improve the parkings and rising sea level and not go to the monstrosity of the convention center?
Okay, so I'll give you a little example. Anybody familiar with Everglades City? Okay, it's west of here. We're working on the old Everglades Bank right now. Its finished floor is at 3 feet. We're keeping it at 3 feet. Oh, how can you do that? Well, we're going to put flood vents, So on the occasion that a monster hurricane comes in every 5 years or whatever, water can come in and go out. Then the floors can be cleaned up. The floors are going to have protection. The walls are going to be protected. Everything can be mopped and cleaned up. The furniture can be moved upstairs, right? We are going to have to live with dealing with storms until the bigger issue of, global warming, right? Okay, we're all going to have to do our parts with every little building, every little thing that we do. Start thinking about, it's going to get wet. How do you deal with it, right? Because the wetness is not going to go. The wind, historic buildings were very well built. A lot better. I mean, the 2x4 was a 2x4 of old time, right? Not 1 and 3, well, probably like 1.5 now. Who knows, right? And 3 5/8, right? And the materials the Everglades Bank, when we opened it up, it has vertical 2x4s, diagonal 1x4s on the outside, and then the steel lap, and then the stucco. That thing's not going anywhere. It gets wet. The wind hits it, it's not going anywhere. The windows were much better built, right? So we did the courthouse in Palm Beach. We did impact wood windows for the first time back in 2008 when that building got redone. So it's encouraging the industry to use modern materials in a historic way, to protect the buildings. Yes, sir.
We know we got big issues with the state on the coastal communities, but I just wondered, are there any municipalities anywhere rising up and doing something about McMansions? It was always my theory that people who buy a McMansion spend 80% of their time in 20% of the rooms.
Yeah, that's wow, that's awesome. I'll steal that one for my next one. I love what Coral Gables is doing, to fight McMansions. So you want to replace a house in Coral Gables, it's not easy. Palm Beach has take a look at the ARCOM and the landmarks codes of Palm Beach. The ARCOM has one, it's called a cubic content ratio, CCR. Think of it like a balloon. It's how much how big that new building is.
And then they do a 300 feet radius.
Okay, so you can't build the biggest balloon. You have to be within, your building has to fit, okay? They also do a streetscape analysis every time, which would have been so helpful for the Venetian Islands 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Oh, you want to do a nice brand new modern house? Absolutely. Show me your lot. Show me 3 lots to the left, 3 lots to the right, and 6 lots across the street. I want to see how your new building fits, you know? Because a picture, right? A picture tells 1,000 words, but we're not doing enough of that. We're doing too much written language, and then the lawyers are getting really smarter, and the architects are following the lawyers, and then they're getting around that. But if you have a picture, an architectural guideline book, as simple as that, you can deal with that. Beyond setbacks and lot coverage, you know, and all the other things that we're doing, you know. So cubic content and a streetscape. Yes, ma'am.
From a state perspective, are you seeing any inkling of care being dedicated to mid-century modern? We talk a lot about Art Deco and the Mediterranean, but in North Beach particularly,
Yes.
northern third of Miami Beach, we have a treasure trove of both high-rises and also garden apartments that are about to get eviscerated. They are in the cross sites.
Of developers, right? Because they're waterfront lots, right?
And even the dry lots are, and I hear, and listen, I was on the board of NBPL for about 6, 8 years, and I'm now city commissioner, but I don't hear anybody protecting mid-century modern anywhere except for a couple of buildings in the middle of the state. And what do you think from your state board?
Okay, so I'll share something state and then a local idea for you. At the state level, yes, mid-century modern, we love it. In fact, we think it's great. We've been looking at it in many of the applications and encouraging people to save mid-century and reuse mid-century, like the prior architectural styles, and it's taking on quite well. You know, even small ranch houses, you know, and small districts, you know. So again, remember what I said at the beginning, designation at the local level is really the only way to protect. If you don't have designation up there, then something, a storyboard. What's the storyboard? It's called Bay Harbor, Bay Islands? Bay Harbor Islands. Bay Harbor Islands, right? All right, let's take pictures of Venetian islands. Let's just take, right now, let's go take some pictures, hire a photographer, okay? And let's have someone go through the research. You guys have archives and research, right? Like Palm Beach does, which is great. And show them what it used to look like and put that story together and share it with the people up there. Avoid this at all costs. Because if you don't show it visually, graphically, they're going to tear down everything over there and going to replace it with more black buildings or white buildings with little L's or, you know, whatever the foo-foo trend is for 2024. I think it's the stackables. I really do think the Jenga game, remember? I really think that's coming strong. I've already seen a couple of projects here in West Palm and in Seattle and other cities, and it's placeless architecture. Historic places is what give us a soul, right? The historic places is that what counts in our cities. It's the only legacy that we're leaving for future generations and the only way we're respecting prior generations, you know? Once we lose the core, you know, we end up with, I know, right? Which is wonderful. Thank you. I'm so happy to have a great group here today. Thank you.